Three.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of our Eurythmics podcast. I'm Mark Stevens, and I'm joined, as always, by my friend Rex Saldana.
Hello.
Rex. Wow, it's been a while. We haven't done a podcast since April 27th when we had Meredith Oakes on, the author of Rock and Roll Woman, and she was such a great guest. It was such a great podcast.
Yep, it was wonderful. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. It's a good one.
Yeah, so like I said, Dave and I have not, Rex and I have not done a podcast since April 27th, and a few things have happened since then. Dave and Annie were inducted or chosen to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yay.
Woo!
So all that voting, of course, our 450-some thousand votes or whatever it was from fans, of course, doesn't really count a lot, but they got in from the membership. They will be inducted. The official ceremony is in November in Los Angeles. And so really excited about that. That's just great. All these years, we've sort of been waiting for that. And also, I think the day that we're recording this, Dave Stewart's new album, sort of this opus album, this box set, Ebony McQueen, is out today. So lots of things going on in the Eurythmics world. But today, we're going to go way back. And we're going to go back to the last official full Eurythmics album, 1999's Peace. And joining us today is another Eurythmics fan. It's not always just Rex and I that you have to hear from, of course. So joining us today is Christopher Perrello, and he is from Syracuse, New York. So he's on the East Coast time like I am. He says he is a lifelong Eurythmics fan. That means from birth, he was singing Sweet Dreams Are Made of This. We know that for a fact.
Yes.
He's employed by Syracuse University. He's the Director of Career Services and an Adjunct Professor of Communications. He says he lives with his partner of 17 years and a pet parakeet called RuPaul. Now, that's not the same entity, right? That's two different, your partner and a bird, right?
My partner is not RuPaul. My partner is Art. My bird is RuPaul, though. Yes.
Right. All right.
Just so
because the way you had it, I'm like,
sorry.
Yes.
Missed the comma.
So, no, I'm joking. And besides all things E-related, that's Eurythmics, he enjoys going to concerts, traveling, and all things Peloton. Is that right?
Yes.
Do I have that right?
Yes. I'm Peloton. Yes. We're advertising today.
Oh,
get some royalties.
See, yes. If someone would like to sponsor our Eurythmics podcast, here it is. So we've done it.
No sponsors for, Eurythmics didn't sing for Coke or Pepsi, so we don't do anything.
That's right. Although Peloton plays a lot of Eurythmics, so that's one reason why I love Peloton. So, yeah.
See?
Well, then shout out to Peloton for that.
Yeah.
If we keep saying it long enough. But one thing that I love to hear from Christopher, that he says with his Gen Z students, he does his best to introduce them to Eurythmics. Yeah. So welcome, Christopher.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like I've known you. You're welcome. We love having you. I think it feels like I've known you forever, although like a lot of us in the Eurythmics world, I've never met you.
No, we could have crossed paths when we're both Disney people. And so we're usually down in Disney relatively around the same time, but before the pandemic, it just never worked out. So perhaps
so
a 40th Eurythmics reunion or something like that. I could finally meet you in person.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So, and we're also not being joined by another Eurythmics fan today, but we have some comments from them, and we'll bring that up in a few minutes.
Nice.
But Christopher, you had commented, on one of the Eurythmics fan Facebook pages about how much you liked Peace, and you've got a really interesting story on your introduction to Peace. So tell us a little bit about that before we start talking about Peace.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. First of all, I feel like an actual Eurythmics fan now. I've always felt like imposter syndrome because I was so young when Sweet Dreams came out. So Peace is my coming of age narrative. It's my coming of age album. The album was released on October 19th, 1999, just so happened to be my 17th birthday. And so, with Peace coming out on my 17th birthday, my senior year of high school, weird things were going on, if we can all recall what was going on around our 17th birthday. And then here comes out an album, and the song 17 again is on it. So being a Eurythmics fan as a very young boy, right? My parents listened to Eurythmics incessantly in the house, so I always knew who Eurythmics were. And then going through my teen years thinking this group will never exist again. They will never get back together. There's no way in hell. And then all of a sudden, for my 17th year on this planet, they happen to be reuniting and putting out this album that is so closely tied back to their own meeting experiences when they were coming of age themselves in their early days. There were, like I say, weird things going on. I was coming to terms with my sexuality in a time that was still very homophobic with HIV/AIDS. The song or the album too is political. And for, a budding liberal like myself to see Amnesty International being sort of part of the experiment that was Peace made me feel more comfortable to be that bleeding heart liberal that I still am today, maybe a little bit more conservative, because I'm a trillionaire. So that's my connection with the album. And it came out at a time when I was just struggling with things personally. And Annie and Dave put that into words and music for me.
I think that's such a great story.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I think a lot of the Eurythmics fans probably feel the same way, especially those of us who were teenagers when the first albums came out. I think we felt the same way. A lot of us were struggling with our sexuality. And I think it was very affirming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, through the imagery and the artwork was very affirming. So for a certain subset of people, there was, I think Eurythmics had that kind of importance.
Well, that's the interesting thing, because when we're teenagers, no matter what, we're struggling with things and trying to figure out who you are and what you are and all those kind of things. And it was so interesting, even if you Christopher, you weren't there necessarily, like you said, like a lot of these other people in that same time period, but what they did, it was so interesting because they gave you the ability to say, whatever I am is okay. Because, and you hear that. And I think that's such a great thing, and you get that from music. That's part of is music, I think. But there was, something else with them, I guess, visually and all these kind of things. So they gave us lots of different opportunities to do that. So that's great. And so, it is interesting that we pretty much thought Eurythmics were done, and here 10 years later comes Peace. So and I'm happy that it was on your birthday. Happy birthday!
That's
really cool.
17.
Yeah.
I want to say too, like
17.
Being in middle school and high school and saying Eurythmics, Annie Lennox. I mean, people knew who Eurythmics were, right? Like my friends knew who Eurythmics were. Their parents listened to them. When Peace came out, my friends were listening to Eurythmics. Like they were like, oh yeah, these older people, but like they're still cool. And one song, and I think this may shock some Eurythmics fans out there, but the one song that I remember that my friends and other, like the straight dudes on the football team were listening to was I Want It All. It was a song that I think allowed them to feel it was part of the late 90s. And so it's odd, you had these singles that came out, but then by the summer of 2000, my friends were actually listening to I Want It All. Like that was a song that while they couldn't download at the time, they were ripping off cassettes and CDs. And so I did want to make sure I was.
So why do you think that song? Why do you think that song? I mean, how did they know about it? Because it wasn't released as a single. Was it just word of mouth? Was it?
In my honest opinion, it was their parents who had the albums. The parents were either listening to them in the car or listening to them at home, listening to them while they were doing housework. And so when they were playing full albums, because, they were buying albums at that time, I Want It All came on, and it sounded like a classic 90s grunge alternative rock song that seemed aggressive and contemporary, and like it was okay for them to listen to. They were not listening to 17 again. That was not a song you heard at a party. But if you were at a party and I Want It All would come on, and people would mosh and bounce around like it was kind of an okay thing. But after that, then you didn't put on Here Comes the Rain Again. You didn't put on Sweet Dreams, maybe somewhere else. But so I wanted to make sure that folks out there, that was a thing that I actually remember. So it made it okay to be a Eurythmics fan, even in the depths of when all these other Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera's were coming out at that time. So.
Yeah, and Christopher, I have to ask you now, this was post Annie's solo, after Diva and Medusa. So your generation was used to Annie Lennox as a solo artist already?
Yes,
I mean,
very much
you
so.
had Walking on Broken Glass and all those. No More I Love You.
No More I Love You was very popular, although, again, not at the time really celebrated by folks my age. Was popular and they knew it. I think that when Eurythmics got back together, there was obviously this sort of, conversation going on. I truly think about their parents. To be fair, I grew up in the suburbs of New York City, where a lot of my friends' parents were from New York City or were from Philly or Boston and sort of found a place. So I recognize, that my friends growing up, I mean, I still remember being in Cub Scouts and my friends' parents in Cub Scouts in the early 90s and all their parents being big Annie Lennox and Eurythmics fans. I actually even wonder sometimes if some of those folks really knew that Annie Lennox was solo and didn't realize that she was no longer with Eurythmics, that maybe they thought that was still Eurythmics, just as top 40 type pop culture people. So.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is fascinating just from this level of that you are coming from this from a different age, but there's so many similarities, aren't there, Rex, to what you're talking about, where Annie and Eurythmics in the 90s were still on this. They were known, people knew who they were, but they weren't the musicians or whatever that everybody talked about for all the, it wasn't that thing. So they were always this little thing in the background for all of us that some of us just, were geared to. So that's fascinating. I'm really interested in that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of a quote Annie gave during the We Two Are One promotion, where she said, you have to discover us a little bit. Eurythmics aren't immediately accessible. And I thought that was a good way to put it, because by that point they had their run of hits, and then We Two Are One was kind of was on a new label, and they were kind of doing a fresh start, and so I think that all rings true. But it really surprises me about Christopher, about what you were saying about the parents being so into it. I mean, it makes sense, but it also surprises me too, because we don't tend to hear those things a lot. That kind of perspective, You often wonder who's listening to Eurythmics, who's out there, who likes Eurythmics. Well, clearly a lot of people.
I do want to say, I think that Columbia House, or what, BMG Music, when they were doing the pennies and doing the penny CDs, I feel like that was a big Eurythmics time, that everyone seemed to have the greatest hits album and knew and remembered who Eurythmics were at that time. That just seemed to be a marketing ploy.
Yes, I was a member of those clubs at that time, and I do remember Greatest Hits being promoted quite heavily in their magazines and stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, should we take piece by piece?
Yes,
please.
Go through
I'm
that.
ready.
All right. So 17 again. first track off the album, first single in the U.S. So who wants to start?
I'll start quick, and then we'll let Christopher talk because I'm going to be really quick here. 17 Again was always special to me because I was 17 when Sweet Dreams came out. And of course, they reference Sweet Dreams in the song. And it's such a great song about the duality of being young and growing older. And it sounds like it's nostalgic, but it's really not. It's like we don't want to be 17 again. We don't want to be that naive again. We like the fact that we are seasoned. So that's what I got out of it. Christopher?
Yeah, this was so cheesy. Brendan Holiday is going to roll his eyes. If he's listening to this right now, I know Brendan Holiday is going to roll his eyes when I say this. It is my anthem. Oh my gosh. It wasn't just the song. It was the video. And for me, the song and the video are just so dramatic. And it being the opening track is what really made me just reaffirm that I am a huge Eurythmics person. And to be drawn to that 17 Again, that theme when I was turning 17, to me, similar to you, Rex, coming of age 17 when Sweet Dreams came out, was just a very reinforcement of my connection with Eurythmics. And the video, of course, I just think is gross in a way. They're being shot at and dodging bullets, and that dramatism of Annie and Dave comes through not just through the audio, but also through that fabulous video where they're just so campy. I love it. So, yeah.
And Mark and I have talked about this. I don't know if it was in another podcast or privately. Sometimes I forget what we publicly say and what we privately talk about. But has anybody noticed the first few notes of 17 Again are similar to Why? Do, do, do.
Oh.
Do, do, do. And I always wondered if that was deliberate, if that was because I think most Eurythmics fans take Why as a song about Dave and Annie's relationship.
Yeah.
And then here we come with 17 Again, where they're coming back and recording a new album and coming together and reminiscing. And the fact that they use that same, melody, it to me is almost like a nod to Annie's solo career, but also a nod to the theme of Why. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the notes are completely different, but it sounds that way to me.
Interesting.
I love it.
So I think for me, and 17 Again is one of those songs that stays with me. And what I mean is one of those songs that's in my head that I go around. And if I hear that song once, it stays with me and I'll go around singing it. You don't want to hear me sing, but I go around singing that song. And the thing about Peace, the album, is I think it's a really mature album. And what I mean by that it just is Dave and Annie at a place in their life. And I also think that it's possible, although Christopher, you're certainly would totally debunks what I'm about to say, is that I think sometimes that fans could come back to Peace many years later, and I think I have, and get a whole other appreciation for it because I've grown older, and so maybe that does work for you, Christopher, too. But there are songs on Peace that I have found that I didn't like at the beginning that I actually like now, that I rediscovered them in a different way. And I kind of wonder that if that's my own maturity coming in.
Yes.
Okay, you were shaking your head, Rex.
No.
He's totally disagreeing with this.
It's both. It's the maturity of being older and and rediscovering. I feel the same way. There are a couple of songs on Peace that I didn't like so much back in the day, but now I really appreciate them.
But let's say the first track on this album, Annie Lennox, the first word is "yay." So it's it's not a young kind of thing. Yea, though I venture.
Like a Bible verse.
Yeah.
Bible verse, basically.
I really want to know, is there any other pop song that starts out "yay"? I don't think so. But
that's a good point.
It is.
The thing that strikes me, the thing that strikes me about Peace the most is Annie's lyrics, and even if there are songs that aren't my favorite songs, I can go into them and grab little sections of lyrics that I think are just absolutely brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
And I think beautifully written. And I love it for that reason, if nothing else.
Yeah, I would have to quote, "Times might break you, God forsake you, leave you burned and bruised."
Ugh.
I mean, those lyrics are just
Innocence
will teach you
yeah.
how to be used.
Ugh. Yeah.
It feels like to be used. Exactly.
Yeah, I had circled them on a piece of paper here because that's the part. And I remember thinking that 17 Again was going to be a huge hit. It was going to be number one. I was convinced of it because I love the song. And then, of course, we should say, of course, that that it ends by singing a refrain of Sweet Dreams. So they go all the way back. So I don't, I've never really known. I don't think they've ever talked about that, why they did that. What was the reason? It was going back to their beginnings or in a little bit. But I was convinced it was going to be a huge hit. It wasn't. It was a huge hit, I think, on the dance clubs.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't a huge hit. But I was convinced it would be.
Yeah, well, it just has that duality that they're famous for. I mean, everyone thinks, oh, it's a song about, oh, I wish I was 17 again. No, it's not about that.
No.
Just sort of like, we two are one. We two also, but also we two, the two of us. So many dualities in Eurythmics music.
Well, let's go to that because I think I Saved the World Today is a great example of that because, you've got these incredible lyrics that are woeful, really. Monday finds you like a bomb that's been left ticking there too long. You're bleeding. That's how it starts. And then, she kicks into, well, hey, I saved the world today. And so, you've got these dualities, and that's
an irony. Yeah.
Yeah, an irony. Yeah. And I think that's a great song too.
Well, and I think, Christopher.
Oh, I was just going to say, I always felt like this song was supposed to give me hope. Coming into this new world, I was graduating from high school and, the 2000 election was coming up and that was a big deal. And I was like, well, I feel like this song is supposed to give me hope. But I have to be honest, when I was listening to that song at the time, I did not feel a lot of hope. It wasn't until later in the album that I started feeling hope. And I wondered if maybe that was on purpose or if maybe the lyrics were supposed to give us some sort of optimism, but in reality, it's not going to work out that way. So, sorry, Rex.
Right. I think you've hit it right on the head, Christopher. And it's all about like the futility of like helping the world. I just gave $25 to Greenpeace. I saved the world today. And I don't. It's I think what it's saying is no, there's a lot more to be done to save the world than just a toss off here and there, or I took a bag of clothes somewhere today, so I saved the world today. But yet at the same time, I also think there is a message of hope deep in the song, just in the fact that it evokes the emotion that there's more you can do. There's more you can do.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah,
and it was the first. It was the first single in England, I believe. It was never a single in the U.S. Correct?
No.
Yeah. And I don't know. I never really could figure that out with the record label. They had a video. They had something to promote. So I always found that
as someone's campaign theme song in Israel. Or it was sort of controversial.
Oh, really? I don't know.
Maybe I should have checked
I hadn't heard that.
All right, never mind. We're gonna.
No,
maybe it was a drunken
on
Wikipedia night that I was on Wikipedia drunk or something. I don't know. We'll save that for another.
The song was featured quite prominently in a Sopranos episode around the time of its release, and so it got a lot of exposure that way. And I personally know of a lot of people who heard it that way and were turned onto it because of that. Yeah. But I should also point out that I think it pays a little bit of homage to the Carpenters. If you've ever heard the Carpenters song Superstar, it has a similar sort of melody in places.
Do you think
Annie
and
it was
Dave
a nod
were
to the Carpenters?
Were they Carpenters people, you think?
Maybe. I think it could be a nod to the Carpenters as being another famous duo.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Hmm.
I don't know. I think they've got.
Like that.
I've never heard that, but
I like that.
it's interesting to contemplate that. So a single in the U.S. was the third track, "Power to the Meek." Never had a video, but "Power to the Meek." A rocky little song. They did a great live performance of that on the Storytellers.
Yep. Yeah, that was great.
And
yeah.
Did we all see the Peace Tour? Did all three of us go to the Peace Tour? Did you get to go,
I have a
Christopher?
story. I'll be quick. Christopher at
tell the story.
Yeah, 17 years old. So for my birthday, I got money and I bought my friend Megan and my best friend Megan, Catholic schoolgirl, tickets to Eurythmics at Madison Square Garden. And it was supposed to be, I feel like in November. I don't really remember, but I think it was November. And Megan couldn't go the week before. She told me she couldn't go. So I asked, it's an hour and a 20-minute train ride to Manhattan from where I grew up. So I was like, Mom, please, can I go see Eurythmics? I have these 2 tickets and it's my dream. My mom said, Christopher, you are not going to Manhattan by yourself. You are too young. You're going to get murdered and whatever. And I listened like a good Catholic boy. I didn't go. And it hurts me. And I've never brought it up to my parents, bless their hearts, but eventually I must have to say something. If they're going to listen to this, you ruined that for me, Mom.
Just send them a link.
I know your parents were Eurythmics fans, so neither one wanted to go with you?
No. The city was a scary place to them. The city was like the devil's, and to a potentially they're a potentially homosexual son of theirs. They do not want going to Manhattan by himself. So they did not want to go.
I think as you get older, fear of big cities is something that creeps in. So
that's right.
There you go.
Well,
that's true.
So Christopher, you need to send them a link to this podcast so they know. Mom, you didn't take me. I've never lived it down. So you have to send them the podcast. But Madison Square Garden, that's where I saw them. It's the first time I was in New York City.
Oh my gosh.
Flew to New York City for that concert.
Oh my gosh.
We could have been sitting beside of each other.
I know.
Yeah. Oh. You have to look at
I'm very sad about that. I'm going to yell at Mom later.
I've always loved Power to the Meek. I always thought it was a great song, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. No,
I was just saying, Power to the Meek is a great song. I've always loved it. It's energetic and it has a great message. And I have to say, I'm not a fan of the fact that they removed the woo-woos from the remastered version.
Oh, yes.
That's
right.
The vinyl from 2018 has that part missing.
Well, let's
it's at the very beginning when she does that, she does kind of a whoop whoop thing and they omit that. I think there are some later in the song, but there's one towards the beginning which I thought worked really well that for some reason they edited that out. I don't know why.
Well, let's talk about that for just a minute, just so we don't forget. But, so the original album and then the 2005 remaster, we'll talk about another song coming up, but that had different versions. And so the 2018, and you're saying it's different on 2018.
Yeah, there's I don't know. It could have been on the remastered CD as well, but I know when I listened to the 2018 vinyl, some of the whoop whoops have been omitted, especially the one at the beginning, the prominent one at the beginning.
So yeah, that's
where it goes da 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 da, and she does this little wailing whooping thing, and it's been cut out. So I don't know why.
I do like this. I don't think it was ever going to be a hit. But I think it's a great song, and I always want to know. And I wonder if this is a British thing or is this something I just don't know.
Oh, I'm ready.
And she used it again in Lost on Songs of Mass Destruction. I got my fingers stung.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a British term? Because I'm on both occurrences. I'm like stung. Does that mean mashed. What does that mean?
I don't know if it's necessarily British, but I've heard the term my whole life, and what it means is that you've been, like you've. How do I can't put this into words now. It means like like you got stung by somebody, or you were taken advantage of, or something.
Okay.
I don't think it means literal pain. I think it means like something has happened. Someone's taken advantage of me. I've been treated wrongly. I've got my fingers stung. Yeah.
Christopher, you agree?
You've been beat up and bruised, I guess. Yeah. I wondered the same thing, Mark. I wondered the same thing. So.
Yeah. And I love to follow Annie's lyrics throughout the years because she returns to certain words. Yes. She returns to certain phrases, throughout.
We'll see that with China Cups. China Cups later in the album. There, one of the songs refers to broken China Cups. So yeah, sorry.
That's right.
Getting ahead of myself.
Okay, so, but I think that's a rollicking little song. I love the lyrics in it. Again, I go back to lyrics on this album are just so great, and I think it's a fun song. I'm not sure it was a great choice for a single, but I think the U.S. record company was trying to figure out, well, what do we put out there? And I think we'll get to one later on that to me is going to be, why did anyone think of this? But let's go on.
Ooh.
The next track is Beautiful Child. So
now, Beautiful Child that's a song that I appreciate more now than I did back in 1999.
Same.
And I think it's because I'm older, and even though I don't have children, I understand how that would feel. And I just love the guitar in that song. That strumming guitar of his is just beautiful.
I feel like it showcases their acoustic genius. I mean, it just goes to show again how Eurythmics were not just a great studio electronic band, but also the acoustic genius of Annie's voice and Dave's acoustic guitar playing. Sorry, Mark.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, they and remember back in, was it 2000? Not 2000, 2020. Dave and Annie came together for a UNICEF fundraiser. They were 1,500 miles apart, but Annie sang, Dave played his guitar. And I asked Dave about this when I interviewed him in 2020. I interviewed him basically about his second album, the Stuart Lindsay album. But we were, of course, you don't talk to Dave and not say, hey, let me ask you some stuff about Eurythmics. Of
course.
And so he had an interesting story, and I don't think I ever published this because the stories I wrote from that were about that album, the Stuart Lindsay album. And so I looked this up today, and he talked about beautiful. And see, and I remember this. They were asked specifically to perform this song for that event, and he was talking about it because he was saying they had a different viewpoint of what this song was about, but that was okay. But it's very interesting how this song came about. And let me read what he said. We knew what the song was about, but it ended up that it meant a lot to people who had not really heard that song before on the Peace album. So so when they performed that, they got a lot of people talking about it. But he said it means a lot to people in a different context. It was actually a very fleeting glance of my young son through a window. And it was his son, Django. And he was still a little boy. He was born in 1991. But, of course, they're recording this in 99. And Annie saw him through a window. And I think he was sad or maybe crying a little bit. But she just noticed him. And Dave was playing chords, and she started singing, "The way you hang your head has made the tears come down." And I asked him at the time, did Django know that? And he said he does, that the song is inspired by him in a way. But he went on to say that he always thought their best songwriting came when they exploited a tiny spark or element of life and turn it into something really emotional. And I thought that was and I hadn't heard that. Maybe other people had heard it, but I hadn't heard that specific story, how it came about. And we can, I know this is an audio podcast, but when we record, we can see each other. And when I think Rex, you said that, that this song has sort of come on its own for you. And then all three of us were nodding our heads that it was a song I think we've all grown into.
Oh yeah.
In a way. And I think that's a lot about the peace songs, but because it's not a song I liked at the beginning. I skipped it.
Oh yeah.
And over I came back to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think at the time I felt like,
it
was kind of boring. Let's move on, and now I listen to it all the time. I'm in my car. So.
And it's a perfect example of how art, like fine wine, over time ages well, and also your perceptions of it change as you get older and stuff. So yeah, I like that when I like a song more years later than I did back when I was younger. Yeah. I think that's a good thing, actually. Anything But Strong?
Oh, love that.
Why don't you start talking about anything?
Anything But Strong. I'm sorry, I'm going to gross some people out, but that was the first song I remember being attracted to boys and being like having my heart broken by a boy. And Anything But Strong was like the song that I would listen to at the time to kind of help me, mull it over and kind of get over it, because I had no one to talk to about it at the time. So that song, the lyrics, it was like, oh, Anything But Strong. It was the lyrics really spoke to me. So I go back to that song and I think like, oh, that one time that, I had my heart broken or whatever. Anything But Strong was the song that was there for me, So, and that again, beautiful lyrics, beautiful introduction to the song too, sort of a bizarre hippie kind of 60s, late 60s vibe to it or something. But just a song that I just speaks to me at every level.
And I love that because so many songs, I mean, we all have this. Everyone around the world has that, where some song means something so much to you for a certain moment in time, for a certain reason, and it sticks with you no matter how old you get, no matter how much time has passed, and you go straight back to that time period. You feel it, you hear it, everything. That's really interesting.
It's bizarre.
So, Christopher, when you listen to that song now, after what you went through as a teenager and all that, how do you feel about now as an older person? How do you feel about how you felt at the time when you heard that song and you were dealing with like a bad boyfriend?
So initially I feel like it's so trite and silly and just inconsequential. But when I was thinking about it more today, when I was listening to all the songs again today, and that song, like I felt it again because I remember the boy's name. I'm friends with him on Facebook now. That jerk, and so, but to see how it's stood with me this period of time, and then to go back and it reminds me of what I felt at that time. You can't get that with a lot of other, other sensory kind of instigators. So that song does it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and again with great lyrics like "But wanting is not the same thing as needing."
Yeah.
Love that.
I mean, that's just like
brilliant.
I mean, haven't we ever been in a relationship where you maybe needed it, but the other person wanted it but didn't need it? Or, you know how that goes.
Anything in life like that, and I think that's why. I think that's why it works so well. I want to bring someone else in now, like I alluded to earlier. I had asked Nancy Jacobs and her husband if they would like to join us because I knew that they really liked the Peace album, and they couldn't join us today. But she sent me some messages about songs that meant a lot to her, and they're really great. And I want to read some stuff that she said, and this is one of the songs. Anything But Strong, she says, is one of those songs where the lyrics and the melody work together so well to soothe the soul, especially for a depressive. I like to put it on full blast when too much darkness hits me. It expresses human frailty, how weak and alone we feel, and also evokes the deep well of strength and recognition of connectedness that keeps us going.
Wow.
That combination of being open and aware about what challenges us while digging deeper for illumination is some kind of alchemy for me, and it is present in so many Annie Lennox and Eurythmics songs. And I thought that was a great description of
it is
that and how she feels about that song. And
we got to get her on a podcast.
I know.
Yeah, I would love to.
Jeez, I'm sorry, everyone. She would have been much better.
No. I invited both of you. You're not.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd invited both of you at the same time. And, really, we go back and I mentioned Thomas Lindsay a moment ago, who, actually recorded with Dave. And he discovered Eurythmics with Peace, and he'd been a great person to talk about. But, and I think that Anything But Strong is one of those songs that I think the Peace album does evoke a lot of 60s sound, a lot of Beatle-esque sound. And I will tell you again, too, this is one of the songs that I skipped over initially and that I came back to and really appreciated later on.
Wow.
Right.
And that again and again with Peace, I found myself doing that, and I'll talk about another one later, but that was very much. But Peace Is Just a Word is next.
Which I think is very self-explanatory in what it's about. But I have to tell you, the first time I heard that song, I burst into tears.
Yeah.
Because, it's just, her delivery is so achingly, you can hear the aching in her voice and the pain in her voice. And, stop the world, shut it down, turn it off. It's just a great song, and we know what it's about. And that was released as a single there, wasn't it, in the UK?
In the UK, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, the word bleed is in lyrics on this album. She is pulling all of this stuff out. And there is this theme, this concept to the album of Peace. And I think the title itself, after albums called Savage and Revenge and such, and I think both Dave and Annie knew, okay, we've come back together after a decade. Peace. This is going to have a lot of different meanings on a lot of different levels.
Right.
And of course, Peace Is Just a Word was the final song for each concert on the Peace tour. And man, did that work really well. And they've always had that, haven't they, on all their tours, where they had a song. A lot of people will end a song with a big rocking number or rousing number. They've never done that. They always take it down, leave you with something else. I think you're supposed to leave and sort of think about what you've done, what you've seen, what you've heard. And man, that was a great. Well, no, I'm wrong on that, aren't I? Peace Is Just a Word, and then they roll it into Sweet Dreams. I'm wrong on that.
Oh,
you
had me convinced.
But you're also right in a way that they do take it down like that.
But
you're right, they do take it down that way, and they kind of ease you down, and then there's the last one. Yeah, we'll always want to leave them wanting more, right?
Yeah, but there's that great guitar part at the end of Peace, and goes, and then they move into Sweet Dreams. Sorry about that. That's one of my favorite things, and I messed it up.
And I wanted to say, the lyrics, turn out the sun. I'm so tired of it turning around. Stop the world. Call it a day. I have felt that way specifically over the last couple of months, what with COVID and the Ukraine war, and with one party in the U.S. trying to take away everybody's rights and keep people down. You just get exasperated, and you just shut it down, turn it off. I'm sick of this.
The song
but then the next day I'm feeling positive, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, you got it perfect. The song is more relevant now than it was in 1999. And Annie, you see it on her Instagram, and I'm sure Dave feels similarly. So
I think she even said "Peace is just a word" in a recent post about Ukraine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's interesting too, because I think the theme of this album, in the sense of peace and the topics that it brings up about the world and how bad the world is, it was again something that was before its time. imagine if this had come out after the Iraq War.
Ooh, yeah.
Imagine if this had come out, during all of these kind of things, because it preceded all that.
Yeah.
But, as Amy says all the time, these things have been with us for forever. And, we're still trying to figure it out. We can't do it. So, it was an album before its time, I think, in that, and it was so good at being a concept album that it took you through all of that.
Exactly. Yeah, you hit it on the head with that. It was prescient, but yet at the same time, it was also, like you said, the wars have been around forever. But yeah, it would have been really interesting to see what the reaction would have been had it come out a few years later. Yeah,
they would have been burning their CDs, and there would have been protests against Eurythmics, so.
Well, remember what happened to Madonna, who tried to, so was it her American Life album?
Oh, yes.
I think, and she sort of took.
Yes, yep.
And she used the camouflage very much like what Dave and Annie had already done. And I don't mean anything.
Madonna always seemed to be one step behind Annie Lennox. Mm-hmm. That's right. I said it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
And I agree.
But the point of that was that she got vilified, for that. And because at the time you had to be patriotic. You had to, you had to wave the flag. You couldn't say anything. So rock music was in a very tenuous thing there, where rock music had always been, or pop music even, kind of a social discussion for wars and these kind of things, but not at the time.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's move on to I've Tried Everything, which I adore.
I've tried the first version, and that's the one I like the best.
Good. Yeah.
Yes.
I agree.
I've Tried Everything. Of course, it was used also on The Sopranos.
Yep.
Made the Sopranos soundtrack, I believe.
Yep.
Yes. And
That's right. I forgot about that.
And I think that should have been a single, because that song, I don't know anybody who doesn't love that song. So let's all talk about that.
Sure.
Do we all love that song?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I like the original version from '99 and the one on the remaster. I'm not crazy about the one on the 2005 remaster.
Yeah, and so we'll talk about that too. So, but this song just does everything. It just starts out the way that Annie does, and Nancy will talk about this. I'll look some stuff up that she and I were talking about. But there's that weird juxtaposition in this song where she's singing, sweetly almost, and then that chorus of "You're a loser now," and it's bam. And something that Nancy had brought up earlier when we were talking about message, that she finds a lot of things in Annie's lyrics where it's Annie talking to herself almost.
Yeah.
And then we take that in a different way. And I think that's part of what's going on here, that she's going through these things, the truth of life, but I can't make it. And then it's pushing it out, and she's talking, "You're a loser now," and go back to her famous lyrics on "Why" from Diva. And she talks to herself and she says, "Why don't you ever learn to keep your big mouth shut?" And so there's a lot of this conversation with herself. I don't know if she does this in reality. I'm not going to say if I do that, but I may do that a little bit. Sometimes I may talk to myself. I'm not too crazy. I don't know yet. Don't get me in the straitjacket just yet. But I just
well, have you noticed that the song is sort of about futility in a way, right? Mm-hmm. Futility in a relationship. And the beginning of the song has that kind of doon 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 doon, which feels like a circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you're going like in a relationship where you're going around and around in circles and you're not getting anywhere. Just an observation.
No, Rex, you're pointing out all those good observations that I didn't think of. So thank you. I'll be listening to those.
Oh, well, thank you.
I mean,
and likewise with you.
I should be cool, but I'm burning hot. I should be good, but I fell apart. Geez, I mean, haven't we all thought like that sometimes in something like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. And I just think that's just done so well.
That's why the song is so universal.
We've all felt like losers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it should have been a single. I don't know why Dave and Annie didn't think this. I don't know why no one at the record label said, this is a really good song. I think it will connect with people.
If Arista put it out as on the Sopranos soundtrack, they knew that it would tap into some pathos somewhere. And I mean, I think for at least us three, it's such a brilliant song, and maybe their hope was it would organically sprout as a particular a hit somewhere. But because I remember seeing that on the Sopranos soundtrack, and I remember there were a lot of people with that soundtrack back in the day.
Well, I think by that time, even in the late '80s, Eurythmics were becoming more of an album-oriented band and less about their singles.
Yeah.
And I think by '99, that's where they were in the terms of music at the time. So you may be right, Christopher, on that too, that it was sort of put out there as another way to keep the album out there. So I think that. But let's talk about the 2005 remaster, where it's a totally different version, especially at the beginning. And we've never really been told how that came about, and some of the other songs are, and even the 2018 remaster, there's some that's slightly different. But and I don't know if at the time, that we're going to put these remastered albums out, and this just came out 6 years ago. Dave, can you do something? Can you tweak some things just to make it something different? I've never heard anything talked about it, and I think the original version is the best version. I never disliked the 2005 remastered version. I just thought of it as sort of a remix. And I'm all about a good remix.
That's a good way to put it, Mark. I didn't really dislike it either. I just thought I don't like this as much as the original one. Yeah.
All right. I know we got to move on. I Want It All. We talked a little bit about that earlier. So anybody else want to say anything about it?
I was really interested to hear Christopher's take on that and how teenagers at the time really kind of embraced that.
Yeah.
I can see why now, because of the sound of it and all that. So I love hearing things like that, because you often wonder, does anybody hear this stuff?
Yeah. I mean, perhaps that should have been the single. I mean, it is a very catchy. It's one of those sort of Eurythmics could just make those mainstream pop hits. Maybe that's what it should have been. I don't know.
Yeah, and I remember MTV used it in some promos, like as background music. And it didn't have anything to do with Eurythmics. It was what they would think they were promoting one of their shows. But in the background, you could hear, I Want It All.
See?
And I thought that's interesting.
Well, and of course, it opened the Peace Tour. It was the opening song from that. And but now something interesting. I want to read something from Nancy too. But those lyrics are exactly lyrics from a Queen song.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's a nod to them or just. It's I want it all, I want it all, I want it now.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the exact same lyrics. So I don't know if it's a nod to Queen or if it's just Annie and Dave we're going to sing this same kind of.
I think probably both. Maybe I think when they were writing the song, they probably weren't thinking about Queen, but as it came out, they were like, "Oh yeah, Queen has this thing too." I can't say what the songwriting process was like, but the theme of the song, consumerism and dissatisfaction and everybody has to have something that's going to make them happy that really doesn't.
Let me read something from Nancy on that. Seems a lot of people don't respond so well to I Want It All, but to us, she's talking about she and John, it's a very wry expression, just as you said, Rex, of modern consumerism and quick fix attitudes which plague our society. And the monotone simplicity of the melody with the heaviness of the music is perfect to express that.
No.
Once in a while, we get to the urge to blast it, and there is always a smile on our faces when we do. I love that.
Man, she's
Yeah.
good.
On.
Oh, I like her takes.
She is good.
Man,
Nancy, we wanted you on.
we'll do a part
but,
2.
We've got you anyway. Part
Yeah.
2. And
Gosh, Nancy's so good. She might be better than us.
we'll have to be careful. Nancy will do her own podcast.
She'll just do her own.
I know. She could give us some serious competition.
She
Are you
could.
listening, Nancy?
All right, let's go to My True Love.
Ugh. This is another song I didn't appreciate back in the day as much as I do now.
Oh my gosh.
And the part I love the best is that part.
That's my favorite.
No, the part I like the best is when she does the "and I don't want to remember," and then that "my true." I love that. I call that her Mariah Carey moment.
Oh dear, what an awful thing to say. But
oh well, I'm talking voice. I'm talking the voice.
Christopher, your take.
Most beautiful, some of the most beautiful Eurythmics lyrics. My favorite is, "My true love is a saccharine kind of pill that tastes too sweet for words and cannot be fulfilled." And this song was like one of my favorites on the album when it came out. And when I remember that specific lyric and thinking like, that is the most genius thing ever. So to me, that was like a Beatles moment, or Dave Matthews Band was the big band at that era. So that was my Dave Matthews Band moment for the lyrics in the song. But yeah, gorgeous song.
It's really great to have your perspective, because of your age and when you were growing up and all that. I know I said it before during this podcast, but a lot of the older fans, I don't think were really as in tune with what younger ones knew, saw, or went through. So it's really great to hear all this.
Cool. That makes me feel good.
I will tell you, My True Love was the song on Peace that I hated. I hated that song. I didn't like her vocals. And if you'd asked me a few months ago, I would have likened it to The Hurting Time from Bear with Nancy's Going to Kill Me, because that is one of her favorite songs, and I don't like it. And I also do not like Was It Just Another Love Affair from the Ultimate Collection. And all three of these songs, they have a connection. The music is very similar. I don't like the music. And Annie's voice is a register that doesn't work in my brain. I will also say to you, though, I listened to My True Love today, and just to sit down and listen to it, and I kind of liked it.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad to hear that,
Right.
Mark.
So I'm going to give it some more chance.
I totally see what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. I think for me, I loved it from the moment it was on Peace, and it's the best song to me. But I understand where you're coming from. Yeah. I don't agree, but I understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also, and that lyric about he's sitting on a pile of stones, wondering to himself, where did I go wrong?
Yeah.
Wow. That is so like let's just I mean,
that's a very visual thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm almost certain that is some, I don't know who she's talking about specifically, some man in her life. And that's a very visual thing for her. That's just not lyrics you create. That's something in her mind that she remembers or she's seen.
Oh yeah.
Because that's a great lyric. I will absolutely say the lyrics in that song are fantastic. It just took me a very long time to appreciate it.
And doesn't it sound like at the beginning of the song, like seagulls, like they're at the water or something?
Yeah.
And then and he's sitting on a pile of
So-
stones, like maybe by the water. That's kind of way I.
Yeah. Okay.
They're sound of like birds, like they're at out in
Yeah.
nature somewhere by the water.
All right.
Yeah.
Forever. Let's go to the next song, Forever.
Christopher, well, you start with Forever.
So Forever, I'll try to be quick with this. I'm sorry. This song reminds me of my twin brother. Forever is a song, when it came out, I just felt like the lyrics were about us growing up together. And, even though we were two totally different people, he was a football player, jock, loved the girls, and I was the opposite. Was a song that was going to carry us throughout our existence. He tragically died of suicide in 2009. So the song meant so much to me about my twin brother when it came out in 99, and then 2009, 10 years later, not long after, the 10-year mark of this album, he killed himself. And so for me, Forever is the song that means he's always around. He's always here, just like Dave and Annie will always sort of be together in different spirits and that sort of thing. It's one reason why I think I was able to get over his death and be so resilient. Forever, that's what that song means to me. I know it's kind of a campy song, very pop, top 40, melodic. It should have been, in my opinion, a single. But that song just means so much to me. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and very sorry to hear about your brother. And I think that shows, the power of music and how people can the song is about their relationship over the years, but you can apply it to your relationship with your brother, and anybody can apply it to any relationship. Yeah. So again, that's the universality of music. I think the song is very Beatles-esque.
Yes.
It sounds very Beatles-esque. Yeah. And
and it's okay.
You said you thought it should be a single.
You can still trash the song if you don't like it. I'm okay with that. Yeah. I don't know where it sits with Eurythmics' fans.
Sometimes I veer from thinking it's a little too over the top, and then sometimes I think it's just perfect. Yeah. So I get conflicted about that song.
It was for me another song for many, many, many years that I didn't like. It didn't connect to me.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, this is probably 5-6 years ago now, and I have all Eurythmics songs downloaded on my car, stereo, whatever. They're all in there. Whoever gets my car, whenever I sell it, they're getting the entire Eurythmics catalog. But anyway, so, I'm just driving along. I've probably been on the phone, and so Forever is playing. And, I turn the radio or the volume back up, rather, and it's on the bridge. And I've never made it through the song, so I've never paid attention. So it's on the bridge. The way you live, the way you die, the stuff of life's in short supply, and it sometimes hits you strong, remembering that things go wrong. The song of life is just a song, and everything goes on and on. And that absolutely, positively did it. And I love this song because it just hit me. What the hell have you been doing this song, and you've not been listening to this?
What the hell were you doing? Not even listening to the whole damn thing. Do you also turn off movies halfway through that you don't like?
I can't be bothered
too much.
Actually, the older I get, if I don't like a movie, I'll turn it off.
Oh yeah,
I don't have time.
I'm there too.
Waste my time. I'm not going to sit and watch something I'm not enjoying.
I mean, isn't this amazing that this album has done that at so many levels? That we've rediscovered them, or at least I have, and I think you all have talked about some in rediscovering them. And I wonder, there are a lot of fans who this is not their favorite album; it's one of their lower. And I would suggest to them, go back again and listen, and see if you have a different interpretation.
Yeah.
And I think if you listen on your headphones, and I think you get a lot of different things out of it.
Well, we don't want to sound too full of ourselves, but hopefully maybe some of the insights we've shared might make people think differently about the album. I don't know.
And let's go to the final track.
Yeah. Could I start with that? Because Lifted is very special to me. I've always loved the song. I want it played at my funeral.
Nice.
That's the song I want played at my funeral because I think it has a positive message about carry on, be lifted. And Mark and I were talking about this the other day. It has it has the feeling of kind of in the beat, like a New Orleans funeral march. If you've ever seen in New Orleans where they march down the street when someone has died, and it's very like boom 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 boom, and that's what it feels like to me, like sort of like a funeral march. But again, with the duality of Eurythmics, it's all about staying strong and moving forward and being lifted. And that's, I think, why I thought I wanted it as my funeral song, because I think it is that in a way, but yet it also has the positive vibe.
I found that out from you years ago. You said something about that you wanted it at your funeral, and it's the same with me. I want it at my funeral.
Wow.
And I think this is not only, in my opinion, the best song on Peace. It's one of the best songs Eurythmics ever did.
Oh.
It's just
I would agree.
Oh my gosh, that makes me so happy to hear you say that.
So
and that flute solo at the end,
brilliant.
I mean,
so good.
Yeah. So I take it, Christopher, you also like Lifted.
I love Lifted. Actually, Lifted is a song that I remember when I was training to run half marathons, when was a song that, even though it's not a running song, I loved. And I told my partner, I'm like, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it. When I went to college, I didn't really get to Lifted when I was in, until I went to college, and then I was really, I would start listening to Lifted, and I was just getting into my drug experimenting phase at that time. And so when I would smoke pot,
you were a late bloomer.
I was a late bloomer. I know. I was a good suburban Catholic boy, not a bad one, until I went to college. But when I started finally experimenting with weed and ecstasy and all those other things, Lifted was the song that I would listen to. And so for me, it was almost like that was my Grateful Dead time. That was my moment where I was able to connect to some sort of Eurythmics song and feel chill and really feel connected with the music. And I know that doesn't paint me in I'm work at a university now, but back then that was my drug song, was Lifted. And so that's why I hear it today, and it's almost like, oh, those endorphins come back. Beautiful lyrics. And I love that. I'm so glad that you guys both love that song.
So that's interesting. That, I mean, the whole bit of that is interesting in your life, and the connection you've got, but that you talked about, that you use it when you were training for a marathon.
Yeah.
Because I think it is that song, that it is that sort of almost funeral dirge, there's that kind of thing about it, but
there's a movement to it.
Yes, yes. But by the end of it, it's joy, and and those lyrics and her vocals, your bird in the sky, and all of this.
By the end of the song, you're literally lifted by the flute and the you're like, and so it literally happens at the end.
Music.
So to me, it's always been like you're kind of marching along, and then you take off at the end.
And I think that's the great thing about it for a funeral song. Should it be the last song that people hear? Because Amy already knows there's a whole list of songs you're going to have played at my funeral. Here Comes the Rain Again's going to be in there somewhere. That was all good stuff. But, because it's kind of like what Eurythmics have done over the years, where we were talking about that they sort of leave you near the end, like to be uplifted. And so it's sort of like that, this is a sad moment, but you're a bird in the sky, lift yourself up. There's something else to it, and I think let me bring in Nancy. She had something. Let's bring in Nancy real quick. Lifted is another song from Peace. While it's a direct ode to keeping steady on in the face of heartbreak and trouble, it has an undeniable melancholy, which reflects that this is a task that's not easy. It can be very difficult to do. The choir-like arrangement makes it feel like we are all in this together. Oh. There are many voices, any strong bluesy vocals coming from out of the mix only reinforces its strength, and at the same time becomes a crying out to the void, to oneself, again, that alchemy of melancholy and illumination creates a kind of joy. There is light in the darkness.
Wow.
Darkness has its own light. Yeah. Okay. That's pretty good, Nancy.
I'm just gonna say it. I love you, Nancy.
I know, Nancy.
Nancy.
Let's drink wine together, please.
I know. We need to have a Zoom wine party.
Yes, please.
Now, Nancy and John, they live in New York. I met them when I went to Annie's Nostalgia Barnes and Noble event. Christopher, were you there?
No, I was at a conference. I was at a conference. Yeah, I couldn't go to that.
Okay, I couldn't. But and I met them there.
Are they from like New York City, New York? Or are they outside New York? I'm wondering. Because
I think they're
in
New York. I think they're New York.
New York's a big state.
Yeah. So hey, you need to get together. But I found a quote from a review from the East Bay Times in your neck of the woods.
That's my paper.
Yeah, in 2007, it was for Annie's concert and I just thought the quote from this review, it summed up in my mind about peace. But he said, "This is Annie Lennox, the indestructible diva who traffics in depression to the delight of all those who love her." And I think that's a lot about peace. There's a lot of depression in peace.
Oh, yeah.
But, they bring you up into a delight. It is the dichotomy of Eurythmics, from Love is a Stranger on, the toy piano on Love is a Stranger, and then these really dark lyrics, Walking on Broken Glass with, this happy melody. And, oh, wait a minute, those are really unhappy lyrics. It's the whole thing. Of Annie's lyrics and Eurythmics music. And I think that's a lot to do with peace and a lot to do with that they found peace together again.
Oh, yeah.
And they came back for a
short time. Yeah, of course. Like, again, with the duality, they made peace, and then we're talking about world peace and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And we know they're socially and conscious and all that. So that, real quick, that reminds me of the review in Entertainment Weekly of Diva, where the clueless reviewer said, "What?" She's talking about Walking on Broken Glass. Why on earth is she marrying these upbeat lyrics? I mean, this upbeat music with such downbeat lyrics. Well, the answer to that is she's an artist, and that's how art works. And shouldn't you know that as a reviewer?
Oh, Entertainment Weekly was never kind to Annie or Eurythmics, I don't think. But
no,
Entertainment Weekly.
No, that same review called. Money can't buy a wilted piece of lettuce. Yeah. I'll always remember.
Wait, really?
But yet they gave
say that?
Yet they gave the album like a B+.
Do what? What?
No, I was going to say even with that review, didn't they rate the album like a B or a B+ or something?
They always did that. They hated Medusa as well. Entertainment Weekly hated Medusa, but it always got a decent review on the grade. It was always decent, but you had to search for it. Okay, did you like it? Did you really like it? I'm not sure. But it's so interesting in my life. If someone says something nice to me, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. But if somebody says something negative to me, that will stay with me for days and weeks, and I'll just, woe is me. And so, I remember all these bad reviews from years ago. I can't quote a good review to you, but a wilted piece of lettuce, that has stuck with me.
That's nasty. I don't like that. But
yeah. Well, I think a lot of critics just didn't know what to do with your.
Yeah, they didn't know what to say. Yeah.
And I think now, 20, 30 years later, I think as a society, maybe we're a little bit more sophisticated musically, and I think that's why I think you're going to see a renewed appreciation of them, if it hasn't already started already with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But it definitely is music that's built to last, and music that's meant to transcend decades in time and be reevaluated differently in the future. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And I believe it's happening already.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I'm trying to get the Gen Z students involved, right? So I'm doing my part at the university, yes. Every semester I
please continue with that.
I will, don't you worry.
Because I really feel today's kids are starving for good music.
They really are.
So tell us really quickly, when you do, what is the response? And do you use a certain song? Do you use a video? Or how do you do it?
So especially,
what is it?
Yeah, so in my persuasion class, I do a section on earworms. It's actually how I introduced the course because it's sort of an esoteric form of persuasion, are earworms. And so they have to write a journal reflection. They have to pick an earworm and they have to write a journal reflection on the art and science behind it. And so my sample is Sweet Dreams Are Made of This. I show the video and I get a reaction every time. Some students are like, oh, this song is so dumb. And then I get the students who are like, oh my God, oh yeah, I know the song. Oh yeah, she's a badass. And then I get students who are like, oh yeah, we just learned about her in my rock and roll music class about how she like changed music videos. So it's always, I get a reaction, and that's really, that's all that matters, is that I get a reaction. But two, I say to them, go check out Eurythmics, and they leave there talking and kind of snickering. And, to me, as long as I'm exposing them to it, I don't care if they think I'm a dumbass or if they think I'm whatever. It's just the fact that I made it a piece of their day, of their curriculum. So.
Well, it really warms my heart to hear that young kids are telling you that they learned in a class that, look at how she changed music videos.
Oh yeah.
Because that's what my website is all about their groundbreaking videos. And I just think it's wow. So that's actually getting out there and being taught. Wow.
Oh yeah. I have framed artwork of her in my office. And so when students come into my office, they're like, oh, I know her. We learned about, so it is working, Rex. She's,
I also want to say Syracuse University is on it. You're talking about Annie in your class, and then they're telling you, hey, we learned about her in our rock and roll music class.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I didn't have that in my university.
I know, really.
Although I did do an English paper about the song Beethoven and learned, and I'm still friends with the professor because she was a huge Annie Lennox fan.
See, and I had high school teachers who were big Annie Lennox fans when I was in high school, so that also helped me. I was like, oh, and they all graduated in the mid '80s from high school. I remember, so
My brother used to teach English at a university in Tennessee, and each year he used the King and Queen of America video.
Oh yeah,
in his class.
So good.
And talk about this, young people.
Yeah.
And there's lots of things in that they're like,
one of my favorites.
I'm not sure about that.
Well, but I am so glad to hear that. I'm glad the younger people are learning about this.
Well, that's good. So, I think that was a pretty good discussion about peace. Actually, I do
too. I think it was really, really good, and I think Annie and Dave should listen to this podcast.
Maybe Dave will be drinking a vodka martini while he's listening to it, and be excited.
I hope so.
Well, Christopher, I just think you added a lot to our conversation, and it's great to finally see you.
Thank you.
Not in person.
Good to see you.
Not just a small square on Facebook.
Not an avatar.
And I'm convinced. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm convinced we'll meet up at some point at Disney World. It's so weird because he'll be leaving Disney World and I'll be coming to Disney World, or sometimes he's there but he's at a different park and I'm at the other park.
Yeah.
It never works. But
sounds like the nostalgia concert. Remember, tons of fans there, but none of us seem to be able to find each other.
Yeah, there were tons of people there. That was so weird. But Christopher, are you thinking about going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame concert?
I've heard through the grapevine that you have to be a paying member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to get there, and so I've already counted myself out. I don't know how true that is, but I will. I can get to be a member of the. But yeah.
Well, the concert's in Los Angeles.
I know. I'm not going to be able to get tickets to that, but.
I think if you're a member, you get access to like a pre-sale or something like that. But I do think the general public gets a chance at some point. But I'm sure that's really hard to get.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that. I don't know.
I think this is going to be a massive concert. I mean, the inductees this year, Duran Duran,
Pat Benatar,
Simon, and Pat Benatar. You know, I mean, this is going to be a concert like no other.
That's true.
And that it's in Los Angeles. I mean, you know, I sort of wanted to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I've never been there, so I was hoping it was going to be there or in Ohio. But I know,
frankly, I'm relieved it's LA because I can just drive right now.
That's right. You can just drive. So, but I hope you've had a good time on the podcast.
I did. I had so much fun, and like I was so nervous before coming on because I'm like, oh my god, they think of me. That I'm like, oh my god, am I really? And so you guys were amazing. I really appreciate the warmth and the fabulousness. And Rex, I'm sorry. I know you were supposed to leave like a half an hour ago, so I'm sorry about that. But I appreciate you guys asking me to be on the podcast. And Rex, I'll be in San Francisco in March, so if you're around, I'd love to see you in March.
Definitely. Yeah.
Whenever you're in New York,
I'll reach out to you on the social media.
Please,
we'll hook up.
Yes,
but yeah, definitely would love to see you when you come out here.
Awesome, great, thank you guys.
So, anything else? Any other business we need to do, Rex? Anything else we need to say on podcast world?
Enjoy this podcast, and we think we have a good one coming. So stay tuned for that one.
Yeah. All right. See you all. Thank you.
Another good one coming. This was a good one too.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers.